What happened? How did we go from being known to have creative maestros in the music industry that were celebrated internationally to just refurbishing pieces of art that were already successful? Here's me going down the rabbit hole of understanding why the Indian music industry has reached a point where at least the majority is only focusing on remaking already successful iconic music. Let's first understand what it was and why we are here. Origin, popularity, and success. The Indian music industry has evolved rapidly as the decades have gone by, possibly has had to deal with the craziest changes that it has had to adapt to, and at the same time improvise so that it can thrive as the years go by. Film music has always been what the masses have gravitated towards since the 1950s. Where music was only promoted on All India Radio, its dissemination was highly restricted due to the conservative perspective of film music being crass and vulgar. Classical music was promoted more, but with the onset of the 60s and the rising popularity of Kishore Kumar and S.D. Burman, who had a huge pop influence, film music started getting promoted to a much higher frequency. The music contained a combination of Western influence, and the physical sales of music, both of film and solo artists, were restricted to vinyl records or LPs, which was only purchased by a small section of the Indian population. Music producers became celebrities in their own right, and there was a huge demand by directors and producers to back the right talent for their films, as music was such an integral part of marketing film for theatres. The 70s saw the onset of live recordings of concerts being showcased on Doordarshan, and increased activity on All India Radio for film music, and most importantly, the emergence of cassettes, a more accessible and affordable way of purchasing music. Cassettes in the 80s became the primary method of listening to music, further leading to the emergence of music companies in the form of T-Series and Venus, and also led to rampant piracy issues. Accessible physical sales led to more third-party recordings of music that could be sold at cheaper rates to the general public. From the late 80s to the onset of the 21st century, you have to understand, musicians and music companies were literally royalty and making huge sums of money. I'll tell you exactly how. Music, films, and solo careers. You have to understand now that especially in the 90s, both the music as well as the film industry had a monetary incentive of creation. When films would be slated to release in theatres, the albums of these films would release for physical sales in the form of cassettes, and with the onset of the late 90s, even with CDs. A large portion of the revenue generated by films would be its music sales through cassettes and CDs. Promotions would take place through dissemination on the radio, music videos on new music channels like MTV, Channel V, and B4U, and the physical sales would take place in brick and mortars like Planet M and Musicland. The volume was so large and the revenue generated so big that film productions actually depended on the music industry to come out with something innovative so that it could drive sales. The 90s saw the success of the music album of the 1990 film Aashiqui, with close to 20 million copies sold, creating a huge cash flow for music as well as film producers. With films like DDLJ and Bombay doing sales between 15 to 20 million copies, producers realized the crazy potential in the market. This also led to the emergence of solo artists and indie pop, who would sign under record labels and come out with their own albums, creating a huge revenue stream for themselves beyond their live concerts. Many successful artists in the form of Alisha Chennai, Daler Mehndi, Lucky Ali, and Baba Sehgal capitalized during this phase. By the way, the current climate we are in is not when remixes of music have become rampant. It was in the late 90s to the early 2000s where plagiarism became the norm. But still, the vested interest of the large physical sales churned out album after album. DJ Akil, Instant Karma, and DJ Hot Remix were pioneers in this movement, and they made bank through physical cassette and CD sales. Revenue model and what changed. You have to realize that the digital market and the onset of the internet with streaming platforms like iTunes, Gaana, Spotify, Saavn, etc. literally led to musical artists transitioning from being kings to mere employees. There was a ton of money to be made, both for the record label and the artists, when physical sales of CDs and cassettes were taking place. They were literally cashing millions, and the margins of the record labels were enormous. Streaming platforms has led to the artists being at a constant disadvantage because they have deals with record labels, who have deals with the streaming platforms, and they get the short end of the stick. Each stream providing literally single-digit rupees to the artists unless they own their own masters, basically the underlying rights of the song. Now that record labels don't earn as much, they don't pay the artists as much as they earned close to 2 decades ago. The incentive to innovate has completely been lost, both from the artist point of view as well as the record label.
If we're all streaming the music and all the labels have deals with the streaming services and artists are contractually obligated to the labels, and the dollar or the penny changes fluctuates monthly with streaming and how we get paid from it, Why the fuck would I be in a rush to put another album out?
You might wonder, the artist makes massive amount of this revenue through tours, right? But this is only the case for top tier artists. Mid-level and indie artists barely even break even with several expenses that are incurred on tour. The music industry has been so severely hit that the companies had to diversify and transition to film producing so that it can result in them receiving better margins. That's why companies like T-Series and Z have been producing films in the last 8 years and have experienced a huge boom in their revenue stream, leading to their music division not even being close to their primary concern. So what does that lead to? Remixes. With the onset of understanding that the music industry is transitioning from a physical sales model to everything turning digital, is that it was essential for them to purchase the masters of the songs of artists. So record labels would purchase entire catalogs of artists, so much so that they can utilize those pieces however they want.
If you own your masters, you get paid outright, like, you're the label. I'm my own label. So the reason the people that complain about not getting paid by streaming are people that are signed to record deals that are getting a small piece of what the master is getting.
The transition to digital and the record labels owning so much of the music led to the re-emergence of remix music in films, exactly what we are seeing today. A creative pandemic of sorts. As soon as a movie is about to release from a huge production company that originally only produced music, you are bound to expect several remixes. It's easy, it's fast, and most importantly, they own it. Protests and the norm. The situation, however, has got a tad bit out of hand, where every second film possesses a remix song, creating a sense of lack of innovation in the music industry. There has been in the process a loss of basic ethics to inform the original creators. While legally record labels have the full right to remix music that they own, it has led to creatives believing that the industry is becoming hollow as the days go by. The remix trend and the outrage behind it is hypocritical and baffling at the same time. Where people rage on Twitter immediately when a remix releases, the sad reality is that the refurbished music gets heavily streamed. Whenever Nora Fatahi comes out with a remix item song, there are hundreds of millions of views. Bacha and Tanish Bakchi get all the views online, but their music still have hundreds of millions of views and streams. The baffling part is that when the movies have made the effort to produce original music, they have literally created havoc online with its numbers and streams. Case in point, films like Man Marziyan, Kabir Singh and Gully Boy. The situation has become so bad that you can notice established big names almost losing their cool, noticing the trend beyond its legalities. Vishal Dadlani, frustrated at the process of music getting remixed and packaged for other films, said this.
आपने उस फिल्म के लिए मुझसे गाने लिए हैं. Without my permission, how can you take it and put it in another film? एक वो भी किसी और का नाम डाल के उस पे, जो कि जिसे मैं जानता भी नहीं हूँ और शायद मुझे पसंद भी नहीं है वो काम.
Mithun, a very talented artist with Mohit Suri, had this opinion.
I think the original work has had a lot more impact and lasted longer than anything that has been rehashed.
But the most heartbreaking is seeing A.R. Rahman's reaction after seeing some of his most iconic songs getting remixed.
And they don't even credit the original composer. So that was an annoying thing. Like, for instance, one of my songs, Ishwar Allah, is one of my favorite songs. And Javed Akhtar Sab wrote. They took that song and they really killed it.
Sadly, what started as a novelty event has turned into the norm, and an easy and most importantly secondary cash grab for record labels. Artists have become dispensable in the process, and what we are left with is the majority producing recycled content, with the chosen few going against the tide. And that was the video, guys. Write it down in the comments below what you think about the current state of the music industry. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram. The handle's right in front of you. Follow me at JammyPants4. Also, please support us by smashing the like button and subscribing to our channel for weekly content ahead. Thank you for watching.